Hi, everyone. We're just going to give everybody another minute or so. I'm Tecla. It's good to see everybody. Happy New Year. I hope that your holidays were enjoyable, fun, peaceful, all at the same time, and that you had a chance to um, recharge and spend time with family. And here we are in the new year, and definitely everyone here at U of Dog, we are wishing you a peaceful, happy, and productive new year. That said, obviously, Tuesdays with Tecla, we're meeting every Tuesday at 6 p.m. and I cover a question or a topic that people write in about. So if you have a question or a topic that you would like me to touch on, talk about, please leave a comment in this stream comment section. And we're collecting those, and we definitely will be at some point discussing the question or comment that, the question or topic that you would like to have us cover. Tonight's topic is going to be about bloat. Someone wrote in asking about that. They had a friend's dog that had bloated, and they didn't realize that that's what was going on, and they were not able to save that dog. So they wrote in asking me to talk about it a little bit and maybe help others from having the same outcome. And so we're going to talk about that in a moment. Also, one other little piece of news so everybody know about, we have 3 classes starting next week. So for those of you that don't know, we have 2 treks of classes. We have our complete self-paced versions. And right now we have a self-paced basic that you can get, and you can work through that at your own pace. And what's really cool about that is at the graduation piece of it, if you're ready, you can sign up for a masterclass that you can make sure you have any questions from all the work you did answered if you did have any questions, and just get a final sign off that your final exam was solid. And then we also have these interactive live courses where you have access to me weekly. We do a weekly Zoom meeting, and we go over each new skill that you're going to be working on. And we have instructional videos and PDFs. We watch the videos together, and we answer any questions you have about them. And then you are able to go off and practice. And then you turn in video of your work, and I give you some feedback on it going into the next class. And then we have time for Q&A, and make sure any questions that came up or issues that came up with people's practice are addressed before we start the new skills. And we just wash, rinse, repeat each week. And we have a puppy class starting next week, and we have a basic class starting next week, and we have an intermediate class starting next week. And all of those courses are 7 sessions long, and if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see information about them in the coming next couple of days. And if you can't find it and you would like to, you can just always email at info@universityofdog.com, and we can help you that way. But let's go ahead now and talk about bloat. So in full disclosure, obviously, I'm not a veterinarian. So what I am going to discuss about bloat is my understanding, having lived with dogs my entire life. So I'm 53, and my mom had German Shepherds from the time I was about 4 years old. And then obviously, professionally training dogs for the past 20 plus years. And then also having run a very successful daycare and boarding facility where we would see between 70 and 120 dogs a day for daycare and boarding, making sure that I kept those dogs safe. So from that experience, that world of experience, and always having my own personal dogs, having my dogs are German Shepherds and Malinois, right? Dogs that are larger and can have a deep chest, can be more prone. So, obviously it's something that I've always watched and been careful about. So I'm just going to share my perspective with you. But I do recommend that you also do a little research on your own, and then check things out with your own vet, especially if you have a large breed dog or a deep chested dog. When you're in for your dog's yearly checkup, or if you happen to go in for something, ask them about it, ask to learn more about it, get their veterinary perspective of it as well. So what I'm going to do here first is explain just my layman's understanding of it as a pet professional, not as a veterinarian, and then like what it is, and then talk about the things that I have done to keep my own dogs safe and to keep my clients' dogs safe, particularly when they were in daycare and boarding. Okay, so bloat is when a dog's stomach, they get gassy, right? And the stomach gets distended. What'll happen though, because of how they're shaped, especially if they're a deep-chested dog, there is actually room as that stomach is distended for it to twist and torque. And what happens there is if it twists and torques, it cuts off, right? Nothing can go in and nothing can come out. So obviously that's dangerous. Like that if you don't get that change really quickly, it's deadly. And so you want to make sure that you're catching this early from the moment a dog starts showing symptoms, right? You've probably got 30 minutes to get them to a vet. Like that's it. And again, there are outliers for sure, but you want to make sure that you're noticing. And if you're noticing the serious symptoms, you got to get them in. So from my perspective, things that you can and should do. If you feed a kibble, make sure, test that kibble, soak it in a little warm water. If you're feeding a kibble that expands in that warm water, then you want to make sure that before you feed your dog, that you soak their kibble so you get that expansion prior to them actually eating it. When it expands in their stomach, that can start to cause a problem. There are some kibbles though, because they're extremely high quality and there's really no grain or filler in them. They won't expand. So those are not a kibble that you would need to soak. And again, I would just make sure you test your kibble. If you soak it for 15, 20 minutes in warm water, does it expand? If it does, then you need to make sure you soak it. So that's one thing. I have always fed a raw diet. So I avoid the whole kibble concern totally by feeding, for me, raw diet. And again, a little bit easier for them to digest. I know it's not going to expand in their stomach. So the better food that you feed, right, the better it's going to be for their digestion and their system. So that's also important. Perhaps for me, one of the most important rules, though, about feeding and our dogs when it comes to bloat is simply this: 1 hour before and 2 hours after. So what that means is this: your dog should be resting an hour before eating. So you wouldn't go and take them running or throwing a ball and let them chase the ball. You would not do that and then turn around and feed them a meal. That won't work well, right? That is setting them up for a possible bloat issue. You also would not feed them and then immediately take them out and play with them, right? So what I always say is this: an hour before eating, they should be in a resting state. And for 2 hours after eating, they should be in a resting state. 100% for sure. And what I would tend to do is is at daycare, I would definitely make sure that we did that at daycare and boarding for the dogs that we took care of. It's also why I worked so hard to keep the kennel very quiet, because if dogs have eaten and then they're barking when they're being let out for their last potty walk, and that's within 2 hours of eating, you're setting them up to be barking and busy and taking in a bunch of air, and again, potentially having an issue with bloating. Hold on one second. All right. Kellen was nesting. She's having a little bit of a false pregnancy, and because she had a heat cycle, and so now she's thinking about nesting. So I had to stop that. You settle, Tiki. I love you. All right. So again, making sure 100% that we're staying on this. They have to be able to settle before and after eating. 1 hour before eating, 2 hours after eating. And I don't negotiate with that. So that's a huge, important thing. The next thing to remember when it comes to eating is if you have a large breed dog that eats a lot of food, like 5, 6, 7 cups of kibble a day, or even if you're feeding on a good amount of raw diet, over 2 pounds of raw diet a day, feed more often and smaller amounts. So when I would have people come in to daycare with or to boarding with their Great Danes, if they weren't already feeding 3 times a day at least, I would tell them that I would prefer to feed that dog 3 times a day. So we would take and make sure that we split up their meals. So basically, I didn't want any dog getting more than 2 cups at a time, kibble wise. So more often. And again, adhering to rest before and after. So smaller meals more often if you have that large breed dog that's eating large amounts of food. For me, a lot of times, especially with the dogs and puppies in my home, they're eating from my hands for work that they're doing. So, and it's a throughout the day thing, 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, right? So they're getting small amounts of food throughout the day anyway. My older dogs, once they're getting meals of the bowl, like Kellen here, basically I feed, she gets her time, like in the morning, I exercise her. And then when she's in, I let her rest for an hour before I feed her. And then she's resting for a few hours while I do admin work, or I go and I take Caden out tracking or something. And then both of my dogs they eat at bedtime, actually, is for me what I have found to work. So I know that they're resting for an hour before I feed them. I feed them, and then I know they're chilled in their crate overnight. Right. So no concerns with having any problems with them becoming active after having eaten. So that's a very important thing. There are other things that you'll see I haven't found to be as important that you'll see notes on the internet, like feed from a raised bowl, don't feed from a raised bowl. Those are the things that I would talk to my vet about if I were you. The things that I'm telling you about are things that I know, all right, 100% that I'm going to be certain about with regards to creating as much safety for my dogs where the possibility of bloat is concerned. So then the other thing I would say is be aware and understand the signs. And it can be hard. Oftentimes the signs can start subtle and you might not be sure. So, and if you have a dog that tends to be nervous, it can be hard to discern. So again, with one of our important, it's basically, one of our mantras here at University of Dog is learn your dog, love your dog, learn about your dog, know everything you can about them. So really become a student, watch your dog, watch what they are like on a daily basis. Because even if they're a dog that can tend towards some anxiety, right, when they're struggling, if they would be struggling with something like bloat, it's still going to look slightly different. Right. So, but you will see an anxiousness to them. They can't settle. They feel uncomfortable. They're panting. They might be drooling. They are trying to go to the bathroom, but can't. Things like that. And then you'll notice that their stomach is distended or potentially, it's distended and hard, like a basketball hard. Right. And so those to me are all telltale signs. And if those are going on, you've got to get to the vet very quickly. Like I wouldn't even call, I would just get there. I'd be calling on the way and I would show up at the front door. Like it's an emergency status. It is not a we wait and see status. Hold on one second. Sweetie, I know. Now I'm going to put you in place. Place. Come on, place. Thank you. Now you got to settle. I know it's for your own good. Settle. All right. So, yep, I know it's very tough when we're having a false pregnancy and we want to nest. Anyhow, I'm going to tell you a couple of stories though, too, that might help drive this point home and how there can be some certain outlier things in them. But I will tell you, there are 3 times when I have raced my dogs to the vet. One time was Penny, way back in the day. She was a German Shepherd I had. Another time was Sky, who was a Malinois that was very special to me. And then a couple of years ago, Kellen. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of those situations, again, to paint the picture of what this can look like, so that you understand what I saw, what I picked up on, and how getting them in quickly helped them. Okay. So Penny, this is I was in Pittsburgh at the time. I lived in Maryland, but I was in Pittsburgh giving a seminar, and Penny was about 8 years old. And I fed raw diet, right? I was always careful about the 1 hour before, 2 hours after, all of that. So I was doing everything correctly for her. And so there's no reason to even really necessarily think about bloat. And so she was like, chilled out in her crate while I was doing this seminar, and, took her out, potty walked her, put her back in her crate, like on and off, on and off, on and off. Okay. And so she was, all fine throughout the day. She'd eaten earlier that morning. And so mid-afternoon on a Sunday, as I finish the seminar, I start driving home from Pittsburgh to Maryland. And for that, she was 8 years old. She'll get to be spoiled. So I had her curled up on the front seat of the vehicle, and she would just always just curl up and sleep. Right. So we're start the drive, and we're about, I don't know, 45 minutes in, an hour in almost on the drive. Or maybe even more. I think we were hitting Donegal and Somerset was what I was seeing on the towns I was remembering. So she's starting to get up and turn and try to lay back down, and get up and turn and lay back down. I'm like, she doesn't seem normal. And so I pulled over. I thought, well, maybe her tummy was bothering her. So I got her out of the car, and I'm just pulled over on the shoulder, got a leash, and got her out of the car and gave her a chance to go to the bathroom. I thought, well, maybe she really has to go. And this is the weird thing. She did go. She actually pooped. She made a number 2, which is generally an outlier type thing. If they have bloat, that's not going to happen, because they've already, especially if they're torqued, they're going to be not able to pass anything. But she did go. But I just looked at her, and I'm like, something isn't normal. And looking at her, you could not tell she was distended, because some dogs, when you're looking at them bloat, they actually do distend out this way, so you would see it. But I decided to palpate. I necessarily wasn't thinking bloat, but I'm like, I want to check your tummy, right? Like, see what's going on. And when I felt it, it was distended down. It was like this, it was hard little basketball. And in that moment, I knew, I'm like, she's bloating. Like, this is not good. So I get back in the car, and I'm calling a friend of mine to ask them to help me find the nearest vet. This is like 2007. So we didn't even have all the stuff we have now, like Google now, that wasn't as developed on our phones and all of that. So she's hunting something down, and she's, telling me you got to go almost an hour back to AVET in Pittsburgh. And just as that's happening, a Delaware state trooper pulls over. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I told him what was going on. I'm all tearing up, thinking I'm going to lose my dog. And he's like, "Just follow me." And he put his flashers on. And I mean, my friends can tell you, I don't drive fast. One of my friends, Paul Anthony, is always like, when we're driving, if we're out in Pennsylvania, he's like, "There were Amish people passing you in their buggies, like, and they were looking at you like you're crazy." So I'm not a fast driver, but I kept up with this police officer, and we went through toll booths, everything. My friend had called ahead to the AVET, and they were waiting for my dog in triage. They were waiting for Penny, and we got her in. Sure enough, she was not only bloated, but she had completely torqued. And so they had to get her, they had to flip her stomach back around, all of that. So thank heavens, we got her there fast, and the surgeons were amazing, and they did save her life, and she made it. My next story would be Sky. Sky was already on 3 legs. She was like 8 or 9 years old. A lot of this, like, it's funny. Penny was 8, and we don't honestly know to this day what it was with Penny. It was an outlier type situation. Sky, I noticed discomfort, and I noticed with Sky, it was in the morning, she was having a little trouble going to the bathroom, and a little like, not panting, but just a little restless. So I called my vet, and I'm driving in as I call my vet. Now, she had not bloated, but interestingly enough, she'd have a blockage. And how on 3 legs she did this, I do not know. She had gotten a wrapper back in at that time. I fed a product called Canine Craving, and it came in like a tube with wrapper. And somehow on 3 legs, she had gotten into the sink where I had like put a couple of the wrappers when I finished making a meal the night before, and somehow she got and I didn't realize it because I just grabbed the wrappers of the whole and tossed them. I didn't realize she had gotten one of them, and to this day I don't know how she did that. But in full transparency, and yes, your trainer's dogs are not perfect, right? Like there is no perfect dog. So yeah, she got that out of the sink, that one, and I didn't know about it, but it was causing her trouble. And luckily they were able to give her some of the, I think it's the charcoal, right? And she was able to toss it back up. At the vet, they got it out of her, and then she was fine. And then little Kellen here, Kellen, a couple of years ago, I usually just give marrow bones, right? And at this time I had given her instead the knuckle part, like this big cartilage, all like, and a lot of people love giving those. I tell you, this is like the first and last time I gave one, because I gave one to her and I gave one to Cademan. And this was like maybe 9 o'clock at night, so she had been resting, no problems, but I gave them that while I was watching some TV. I'm trying to wind down for the night, and then again I feed them their last meal, and when I went to put her away to give her last meal, she wouldn't eat, and she was drinking a lot. I'm like, this is not normal, right? So again, I hiked her in the car, and at this point, I'm already driving to the emergency vet. I'm like, I'm not even calling it. I was there, and I show up, and I'm like, look, I think she might be bloating. And she was having a gas issue. She hadn't torqued, but she had a gas issue. And again, they were able to get her she tossed up like all the fat and cartilage and everything from that knuckle bone. And I just don't give those anymore. That's a personal issue. Like maybe some dogs do fine with them. She just didn't. But again, I noticed it and I took care of it. I was like, I don't care now that it's 11 o'clock at night. She's not acting normal, and I'm getting her to the vet now. And probably if I hadn't, I'm wondering, what might have happened the next morning, what I would have woken up to. So I guess what I'm telling you too is be vigilant. And it's much better, in my opinion, to go and find out that you pulled a false alarm than to not go and lose your dog. Okay. So those are my stories about the situations that I've been in where something has gone on and I've needed to make a quick decision, and then been very grateful that I did. So again, to recap, when it comes to bloat, make sure you are feeding, if you have a large breed dog that with deep chest that's eating more than 4 cups of food a day, I would be splitting, if they're eating 5-6 cups, I would be splitting it into 3 meals, and try not to do anything where they're eating more than 2 meals or 2 cups at a time. I would also say that check your kibble. If it expands when you soak it, definitely soak it, right? I would definitely say that that's important. I would say, remember the 1 hour before, 2 hour afters rule. Like they should rest for an hour before eating, and they should definitely rest for 2 hours after eating. And I would say that, you just need to be very vigilant about noticing if your dog is not acting normal, and acting on that. I am a dog mom. Like I'm a trainer, but I'm a dog mom, and everything in my dog momness screams mama bear. And so I take it extremely seriously that I am to care for them. And if something's going on, I'm going to get them in quickly. So that's important. Also, do want to mention, if you're just feeding a few treats here and there, that's not the problem. Like if you have like a little handful of like 10 little pieces of food, you are definitely okay to so what I'll do is, like, before I do obedience with Cademan now, is I'll stretch him out. I stretch him out by having his nose follow a piece of food, target it back to his hips, or stretch it above his neck, or have him do a couple circles or bouncy jumps for it, right? So he's starting to warm up his muscles before we get into the heavy work. And that's, like 8 to 10 little pieces of treat. That's not the kind of thing that's going to cause a problem going into or coming out of exercise, right? It's when they're eating a meal and then going into exercise, that's where you got to give your 2 hours before and after. No heavy exertion or panting. Okay. And also nothing traumatic, nothing that's going to cause them stress, right? So if your dog maybe, if walking, like calm walk, slow walk is generally a good thing for them. But if they see things that's exciting to them, right, I wouldn't go feed them a big heavy meal and put them in a situation where they're going to be anxious and panting, right? So again, just something to think about. And I hope that this is helping you to help your dogs. Oh, Gosh, doggone, I knew I was gonna forget something. See, I just kind of talk off the cuff and there was no talking points on this. The other thing that you can do preemptively, again, for these large breed dogs, is deep chested dogs, is you can plexi the stomach. Find a vet in your area that does it. Not every vet does. But if you're gonna, do a spay or a neuter, or you're gonna do hip x-rays, something like that where they have to go under, that would be a perfect time to do a plexi, and plexi tack their stomach, right? They tack the stomach. It's just they put a couple little stitches, I guess, and the stomach can't torque, it can't flip on them. And a lot of us with our sport dogs do that, right? So I haven't had a need to knock Cademan out and put him under for anything. So he's been, a knock on wood, a very healthy dog. But at some point, if we end up doing a teeth cleaning or something, he's just coming up on 4 years old, I probably will move to do that stomach tack plexi, just so that it's another layer of safety. So that is also a procedure that you can look into as well. All right. Sorry for the little distractions we had with Miss Kellen, but you do see when I actually put her into place and I'm like, that's it. It's over. It's done. Everything got quiet, right? So place is such also a valuable tool for training and settling our dogs. All right. You guys have a wonderful evening, and please ask your questions and in the comments, and I will see y'all next week.